Discover 10 spine-chilling true stories from 2025 that expose sinister secrets and haunted fates. Linda's heart thudded in her chest as she stood at the window, the curtains drawn slightly open. It was midnight, the hour when even the bravest of souls felt the weight of loneliness. Outside, the calm street of Maplewood seemed deceptively serene, but an unsettling chill crept down her spine. The black sky hung like a shroud, pressed tight against the roofs of her neighbors' homes. Staring out, she felt the hairs on her neck prickle as she remembered the latest text message, the one that said simply, "I'm watching." Just as easy as that. Primal fear coursed through her veins. At first, she thought it was a prank, a cruel joke perhaps, an adolescent game played by bored teens hiding behind their screens. But she shoved that notion aside when odd things began happening. The flickering streetlights, the unusual behavior of her neighbors. Jay, the retired firefighter next door, offered her an anxious grin that didn't reach his eyes. Every night Mrs. Thompson, 2 houses down, peeked through her curtains, her eyes wide and watchful, like a trapped animal sensing danger. Something dark lingered just beneath the surface. She never thought danger could creep into her life so quietly. Then the pets started to vanish. First Fluffy, the Thompsons' tabby cat, then Rocco, the dog that belonged to that quiet family 3 doors down. And with each missing pet, the panic in her gut grew heavier. It was something more than just a strange week in Maplewood. It was terror dressed as tranquility. Then the news came crashing through, shaking her from her stupor. Mr. Carter, the town mayor, had vanished. Not a trace. One day he was there smiling at the bake sale. The next, poof. Linda's fingers trembled as she scrolled through the alerts, her heart racing with palpable dread. These weren't isolated incidents, they were all connected in some suffocating way. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But as she turned back to her window, the light flickered once more, throwing shadows across the room. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something shift. A fleeting silhouette flitted just beyond the streetlight's glow. Her heart leapt into her throat. The kind of panic that grabs you, the kind that freezes your breath. Could it be? Was someone really out there watching her? The moment swirled around her, time stretching and bending, until it finally crunched together into a singular realization. She was being hunted. The envelope of safety that once wrapped around her home fell away, exposing the peril lurking just beyond her reach. She was vulnerable, even at home. The thought settled like a brick in her stomach. That night she haunted the streets, piecing together clues hidden in whispers, tightening the bonds of fear as her neighbors' true faces began to reveal themselves. Each encounter felt like peeling back layers of a grotesque onion, unveiling a smell that was foul but necessary, until she hit the raw truth. Through the shadows and whispers, she soon learned there were darker secrets embedded in Maplewood than she could ever imagine. In a crescendo of tension, she had to confront the inevitable. Who or what was she really up against? When everything she trusted began to crumble, Linda felt the impending danger drawing closer, encroaching like a thick fog. And as she turned to face whatever horror awaited her, the question loomed clear. Could she protect Mia and Jake from the nightmares that lurked in their seemingly perfect community? Linda stared into the inky night, her breath quickening as the shadows danced beyond the reach of the faint streetlight. Each flicker sent her heart racing. Was it just her imagination? Or was someone, really out there? The text message replayed in her mind, insidious and suffocating. I'm watching. It was more than a threat. It was a proclamation of her helplessness. Just hours ago, she had seen something in the flickering light. A shape. What if it was connected to the disappearances? She felt the cold sweat trickle down her back as she recalled the tense conversations among the neighbors. the nervous laughter muffled by uncertainty. Everyone was on edge, whispers threading through the veils of night like dark tendrils creeping into their sleepy town. Determined to protect Mia and Jake, she decided it was time to confront this terror head-on. She slipped on a jacket, her fingers brushing against the cool fabric. Outside, the street felt more alive, yet ominous. The air was thick with anticipation, like the moment before a lightning strike. She stepped off her porch, scanning the quiet houses that loomed like sentinels. Peering into the darkness, she focused on the Thompsons' house, where Mrs. Thompson's watchful gaze had grown more frantic by the day. "Don't think you can hide," Linda murmured under her breath, moving toward Mrs. Thompson's ink-black silhouette against the window. She could feel a certainty building within her as she stepped off the porch. The distance seemed endless. Each footfall echoed, a nervous patter against the asphalt, a countdown to some inevitable encounter. The air grew colder, sharper. Her breath crystallized, each exhalation a ghost in the night. And then, at once, something stirred. A movement near Mrs. Thompson's front yard caused her pulse to spike. She squinted. Was it a trick of the light? Or something sinister slinking away? "Hello," Linda called out, her voice cracking. The word felt fragile, swallowed by the night like a moth drawn to a flame. Silence. Then came a rustle, the sound of leaves shuffling as if something were creeping closer, crafting the night from mere echoes of fear. Linda recoiled, half turning, half eager to flee, to be anywhere but there. But as if the very ground beneath her feet anchored her in place, she fought the urge. She needed answers. She thought of the mayor, then of the pets that had vanished. Their loss loomed heavy in her heart, each disappearance a thread curling tighter around her throat. Was it selfish to seek out the truth when Mia and Jake rested in their beds, blissfully unaware of the horrors unfolding? How could she shield them from what lurked in the shadows? As she took a cautious step forward, the silhouette she thought she'd seen earlier now broke free from its stationary prison. The shape warped and twisted, a fleeting specter darting into the enveloping darkness of the trees lining the street. It was a blur, almost human, but undeniably wrong. "Stop!" Linda yelled, her voice sharper now, transforming her fear into defiance. But the figure only moved faster, dissolving into the shadows. An icy chill clawed at her back. Some instinct told her to run, to abandon this path. But to turn back would feel like forfeiting the last shred of safety she'd clung to. That darkness was no longer a harmless shadow. It was alive, breathing, waiting. Just ahead, a cacophony of whispers swirled, snatched from the silence, murmurs smattering through the very fabric of Maplewood. She was close now, closer than ever. What lay hidden just beyond her reach? Linda's heart raced, syncing with the ominous pulse of the night. And without warning she felt it, a cold touch on her shoulder, chilling her to the bone. What awaited her in the depths of Maplewood, and was it too late to turn back? Linda spun around, her heart hammering in her chest. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. She caught a glimpse of a shadow darting behind the Thompsons' mailbox. Fear twisted in her gut like a vice. It felt impossible to breathe, each breath sharp and ragged. A precious commodity traded for the thrill of danger. "Who's there?" she demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. Her voice trembled, betraying her, and the wind whispered wickedly, as if mocking her courage. Nothing responded. The night deepened, heavy and unyielding. She stepped backward, not daring to take her eyes off the darkness that dripped like molasses, promising unforeseen horrors. Linda's hand tightened around the phone in her pocket, the glowing screen almost too bright for the enveloping gloom, its light flickering uncertainly as if echoing her dread. And then she heard it again. Those whispers. They rolled through the trees, weaving into one another like thick smoke. Different voices, some shushed, others panicked. "Help!" came a faint cry. "Help me, please!" A chill skittered over her skin. These were familiar voices, the missing ones that had haunted her nightmares. What if they were right? What if each disappearance was tied to this very moment? She felt the weight of their absence crushing her. "Listen," she urged the night. "I'm here to help, just show me where you are." But the whispers twisted into frantic, unintelligible cries, filling her mind with terror. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, this one larger, more solid than the blur she had seen before. Linda's blood ran cold. The figure stood still just beyond the faint glow of the streetlight, still enough for doubt to gnaw at her. Then, unmistakably, it stepped forward. Linda's heart leapt into her throat. It was a man. His face was obscured, hidden beneath a hood pulled low. Yet more than his appearance, it was his presence that bogged her down. Heavy, oppressing. Did you take them?" she gasped, stumbling backward. "What do you want?" The man remained silent. He slowly extended an arm, pointing towards the deepest shadows that lay beyond Maplewood. Desperation surged through her. Every instinct told her to flee, but she needed answers. She took a shaky breath and stepped closer, peering past the figure and into the darkness. "Please," she said softly, "tell me what's happening." But as she focused on the shadows, her stomach twisted. The air turned dense, thick with something unnameable. It was alive, vibrating with a ghastly resonance. Shapes twisted and morphed just out of sight, curling their limbs in grotesque postures. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just darkness, it was a festering abyss of despair. The man drew nearer, his hood shadowing any semblance of humanity. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers racing down her spine. "You can't escape what's inside." Linda gasped as the whispers morphed into screams, a chaotic cacophony that echoed in her mind. A violent ballet of terror that pressed her against the cold, unforgiving earth. The shadows writhed, reaching for her, craving her warmth, her fear feeding their malevolence. "Run!" she screamed, adrenaline flooding her veins. As she turned, something felt different about the night. It wasn't simply a void anymore. It pulsated with life, thrumming like a deranged heart. But she didn't turn back. She bolted into the trees, branches clawing at her, the shadows hissing as if they hungered for her retreat. Behind her, the man stood watching, the darkness swallowing his form, his laughter mingling with the disembodied cries engulfing her thoughts. Breathless, she burst through the trees into a clearing. The moonlight washed over her, illuminating the ground littered with memories. Lost toys, clothes, shadows of the ones who had vanished. Could she save them? Her heart raced as she realized, if she wanted answers, she needed to follow the truth. But as she glanced back toward the road, a new fear twisted inside her. The man had not followed. Instead, he whispered, a single haunting phrase that chilled her to the core. "When you find them, it will be too late." What had she just unleashed? Where would it lead her next? The moon hung over the clearing like a watchful eye, casting silver beams that danced over the remnants of lost innocence. Linda's breath came in ragged gasps as she scanned the ground, her mind racing with thoughts of the missing. Each item seemed to vibrate with the echoes of their lost laughter, their cries for help. With a deep inhalation, she knelt by a tattered teddy bear, the fur matted and stained. It felt wrong to linger, yet the sense of urgency compelled her deeper. "I'm here," she whispered, half hoping they might hear her. "I'll find you, I promise." But her voice faltered, swallowed by the night. The moonlight seemed to wane, and she felt tendrils of darkness crawl closer. Panic tightened her throat. She was playing a dangerous game. A rustle from the trees made her jump. "Is someone there?" she called out, trying to infuse her voice with strength. Nothing answered, just the oppressive weight of silence descending swiftly like a predator closing in on its prey. Suddenly, a shrill scream cut through the quiet, a voice she recognized. It belonged to Sarah, the little girl who had disappeared while playing in her yard. The sound coiled around Linda's heart, squeezing. "Sarah!" she cried, bolting toward the direction of the sound, compelled by a fierce need to find the girl. As she ran, the ground began to shift. What had once been a welcoming path transformed into a treacherous maze of twisted roots and thorny underbrush. Shadows flitted and flickered, and the chilling whispers crescendoed into maddening wails. "Help us! Help us!" echoed around her, eerie and distorted, merging with the rustling of unseen creatures. Linda stumbled, her foot catching on a gnarled root. and she fell to her knees. Panic coursed through her veins, pushing her to get up again. But something pulled at her, a feathery touch that grazed her spine, soft as caresses but sharp as knives. She could almost feel it wrapping around her, tugging her back toward the clearing, toward the abandoned memories. "No, no," she gasped, scrambling away from the grip of the unseen force, her palms pressing into the cool, damp earth. "I have to move forward." Her heart raced as she crawled forward, shaky hands grasping at derelict shadows for courage. She searched desperately for the source of the cries. "I'm coming, Sarah!" she yelled, the words tearing from her throat. Then she saw a flicker of movement, a small silhouette darting among the trees, a child with wild hair and a dirty dress. Was it Sarah? Linda's heart leapt with renewed hope. She pushed through the brambles, fighting against fear as it whispered doubts into her mind. "Sarah, wait!" But as she reached the edge of the trees, the air crackled. The moonlight faded, casting a heavy darkness around her, more suffocating than before. Time twisted, stretching into an eternity of suffocating dread. Just when she thought she had closed the gap, the figure stopped facing her. Linda felt a jolt of horror. It wasn't Sarah. It was another child, his face a mask of terror, eyes wide with an unfathomable fear. He opened his mouth and Linda staggered back at what came next. A blood-curdling scream, more piercing than any she had ever heard. That scream shattered the night, sending tremors through the trees, resonating with the anguished cries of the lost. They echoed around her, mingling with the quiet laughter of the man who still lurked nearby, hidden in the shadows. Linda turned, scrambling back towards the path she had come from, but the ground beneath her felt alive, shifting, pulling her further away from safety. Where was the road? What had she unleashed by stepping into this nightmare? "Help!" she screamed, desperation spilling into her voice. As the darkness closed in, a chilling thought spiraled in her mind. Was it truly too late? The man's words haunted her like a ghost, echoing a final warning. And then, out of the inky darkness, an icy laugh responded. "What if the truth is much worse than you can imagine?" The ground beneath her quaked, and Linda understood. The true horror had only just begun. Linda's heart pounded in her chest like a caged bird desperate to escape. The icy laugh echoed around her, wrapping her in a shroud of dread. She could almost feel the unseen eyes watching, waiting for her next move. The darkness wasn't just a barrier. It was alive, breathing, hungry. She turned back, her instincts screaming for her to flee. But the ground seemed to ripple like a living thing, pulling her deeper into the nightmarish woods. She stumbled, fighting against the grasp of unseen forces that dragged her backwards, whispering her name with hollow voices. "Linda, Linda." Each repetition of her name sent chills racing down her spine. Where was Sarah? Where were the others? The darkness twisted, morphing into many shapes, shadows intermingling like dancers in a grotesque ballet. "Sarah!" she shouted again, her voice breaking with fear. "Where are you?" The echoes came back, mocking her. A sickening giggle flitted through the trees, as if the darkness itself was taunting her. Linda pressed on, fueled by desperation and terror. Each step felt heavier, like she was wading through a viscous mire. Suddenly, something snagged her ankle. A twisted vine, alive and serpentine. She screamed as the grip tightened, squeezing like a vice. "No," she cried, pulling frantically to free herself. The whispers grew louder, filling her mind with horrors she couldn't comprehend. Something brushed against her shoulder, icy and sharp. She spun around, eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. A figure loomed behind her, tall, shadowy, and indistinct. It wore a grin that chilled her to the bone, a sinister smirk that promised nothing but malice. "Did you think you could leave?" it hissed, voice dripping like venom. Linda felt the urge to retch as the shadow advanced, darkness spilling from its figure, pooling around her knees like quicksand. The words trembled on her lips, yet the scream didn't come. Instead, she felt paralyzed, her mind fluttering in chaos. "Sarah." The name clawed its way out, but a voice sweeter than honey and darker than the night answered back. You should join us. It's safer here. Linda's skin prickled. The laughter, sweet and taunting, assaulted her ears. She recognized it. The other children. No, she shouted, realization crashing into her. This is a trap. You're not safe. With a burst of adrenaline, she kicked off the tendril, gripping her ankle, breaking free. Wildly, she dashed into the thicket, heart racing. Branches clawed at her arms as she pushed through, the world around her shifting violently. The laughter morphed into cries, distant yet close enough to be disturbing. Help us. Sarah, Linda's voice broke. Hold on, I'm coming. She dodged deeper into the woods, stumbling for light, for anything to guide her. She skidded into a clearing. The moon hung low, lighting a scene that froze her blood. Shadows danced, flickering like embers, and in the middle, a circle of children clutched hands, swaying as if in a trance. Join us, Linda, they sang, voices weaving through the air like a deadly lullaby. Sarah, fight it! The pleading tore from her throat as she raced toward them, but a shadow flicked in front of her, solid and menacing. Panic surged as the figure stepped closer, blocking her path. Not so fast, so it crooned, the voice sultry yet suffocating. Linda's mind whirled, grasping at strategy. What do you want? She spat the words, defiance bubbling up even as her knees felt weak. Only what you owe. The figure took a step forward, and Linda felt the earth tremble beneath her. You are part of this now, forever. Something shifted behind her, an overwhelming force pulling her away from the children. She turned desperately, their hollow eyes gleaming with something dark. Join us, they echoed, reaching out with desperate hands. Her heart clamored in her chest. It was close now, the point of no return. Wait, she yelled, feeling the darkness creep across her vision. Linda felt her energy dull, a heavy weight dragging her down into the abyss. And then, a voice came through the fading haze, crystal clear amid the chaos. You can't escape. We're always watching, waiting. The world spun, the shadows deepened, and just as she felt herself slip away, the chilling realization struck her. Perhaps they had all been right about the truth. But what if it was more terrifying than anything she could fathom? As the darkness enveloped her, she wondered if anyone would ever hear her scream. Linda's scream echoed in her mind, swallowed by the void. As the shadows wrapped around her, she thought she felt a hand grab her wrist, pulling her back into the crushing dark. Panic surged inside her like a wild animal, and she fought against the unseen grip, throwing her free arm forward. Let me go. But the darkness thickened. The shadowy figure loomed closer, a twisted grin growing more grotesque by the second. You wanted to find her, it rasped. Now you will pay the price. Suddenly a shrill cry shattered the stillness, the unmistakable sound of Sarah's voice. Linda. Sarah. Barely holding on to her mind, Linda focused on the sound, drawing strength from it. Each syllable wrapped around her like a lifeline. She pushed against the darkness, every ounce of her will aimed at breaking free. The grip loosened, and her lurching body propelled forward, feeling the brush of cool air against her skin. She stumbled out of the shadows, heart racing, gasping for breath. The world shifted around her, trees melting in the moonlight, their branches grotesque and twisted. Where are you? She cried, glancing back, desperation clawing at her throat. The shadow loomed, but now it was distant, receding into the dark, carrying the echo of laughter that echoed like wind chimes, haunting and beautiful, but filled with malice. Get away from them! Linda screamed, charging into the clearing again. The sight was worse than anything she'd imagined. Children stood encircled, eyes wide and glazed, their mouths moving in unison. Join us! Their voices intertwined like hypnotic music, seducing her to step closer. But Sarah's face, twisted in fear, broke through the spell. Fight it! Linda shouted, forcing her legs to move forward. Sarah, please! And in that heartbeat she saw it, the dark tendrils snaking around Sarah's feet, pulling her down, wrapping tighter as the other children swayed dangerously close. Help me! Sarah's voice cracked. No, no, no! Linda rushed forward, agony stabbing her heart as she reached out for her. But the closer she got, An invisible barrier slammed against her body, hitting her hard, throwing her back onto the forest floor. Caught in the web. It's too late. The shadow's voice slithered into her ears, almost comforting. Linda's spirit twisted inside her, fighting against the despair wrapping her like chains. She glanced back at the children, their vacant stares now faintly flickering as if they could see her. "Sarah!" she screamed again, struggling against the force trapping her. "I'm coming, hold on!" For a moment she believed she could see a glint of recognition in Sarah's eyes, a flicker of hope. The vines tore at Linda's ankles, dragging her backward. All around, whispers crescendoed, drowning out her thoughts. "Stay with us. Stay forever." "No!" she gasped, her breath hitching as she kicked furiously, but it only made the grip stronger. A sudden jolt of inspiration struck her. "I refuse," she shouted, pushing against the sensation of cold clinging to her skin. "Your refusal means nothing." The shadows writhed around her, pulsating with rage, and for a brief moment the figure hesitated. Linda's heart raced as she felt a spark ignite within her. "You won't have me." Her anger cut through the darkness, launching her body forward with a surge she didn't know was possible. She tore through the barrier, shattering the grasp that was holding her, and threw herself at her sister. "Linda!" Sarah cried, her voice ringing with a vulnerability that made Linda feel shattered inside. But as she reached for Sarah, the shadow lunged, a scream that sounded like a chorus of despair crashing through the air. The children's faces twisted, morphing into something hideous. "Foolish girl," the figure's voice echoed, now resonating with otherworldly fury. "You will regret this." Linda's fingers brushed Sarah's as the world turned into chaos. The darkness swelled like a storm, threatening to consume them both. "Stay close," Linda shouted. "We need to break the circle." But around them the other children closed ranks, bodies moving together like a grotesque puppet show, their eyes glinting with malice. "Join us. Forever." As the darkness threatened to pull them apart, Linda felt an undeniable connection between her and her sister, a warm glow that pierced through the cold. "Hold on, please." The shadow surged forward with a wail, anger radiating from it like heat. Just as the force tried to engulf them, Linda squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, praying for salvation. And just like that, the world dropped away, silence enveloping them for a brief moment. What choice would they make? As the shadows closed in again, Linda braced for impact, heart pounding, knowing this battle was far from over. Would they find a way to escape the deceptive lure of the darkness, or would they be lost within it forever? The silence shattered like glass. A piercing scream sliced through the air, sharp and ringing. Was it hers or Sarah's? Linda couldn't tell. She lunged forward, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The darkness rushed back, curling around her like thick smoke. It enveloped her whole, filtering out sound and light. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Panic clawed at her throat. The warmth of Sarah's hand faded into the frigid grasp of shadow. "Sarah!" she cried, but only a hollow echo answered. Heart racing, she twisted, trying to sense where the tendrils might pull her. A shiver ran down her spine, a whisper brushing against her ear, chilling and seductive. "Join us." "No." She fought against the voices, their hypnotic lilt trying to send her into a fog of submission. Everything inside screamed for her to let go, but she had to fight. She had to find a way back to her sister. With every ounce of willpower, she focused on freeing herself. The ground beneath shimmered with dark light, as if the earth itself wanted to pull her into its depths. She felt the shadow figure's presence circling, tantalizingly close, its laughter wrapping around her like chains. The children's faces flashed before her, twisted visions of innocence lost. But Sarah was the anchor she needed. Linda held that thought close, latching onto it fiercely. "Fight it, Sarah. We can break this." Linda surged forward, pushing through the fog that thickened, wrapping itself around her limbs as if it could strangle her spirit. With a roar that left her throat raw, she broke free of the shadows for a heartbeat, catching a glimpse of Sarah in the distance, eyes wide and pleading. "Linda!" The cry was filled with desperation, a call to arms, a plea for help. And then the ground beneath Linda shifted. She stumbled, the earth suddenly alive with movement, twisting and writhing. The soft whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, the children's voices morphing into a torrential wail. "Forever," they chanted, their sounds merging into a nightmarish symphony that gripped her heart tight. No, no, no. A surge of strength pushed through her. She wouldn't let this be the end. Gritting her teeth, Linda fought against the dizziness creeping in. She couldn't think about the darkness. She couldn't think about losing Sarah. With renewed determination, Linda launched herself forward again, ignoring the pain of thorns digging into her skin. A shadow lunged back, but this time, she sidestepped, anger igniting a fire inside. "Come on," she shouted, a rallying cry that drowned out the whispers. "We're sisters together." Sarah's expression shifted, flickering hope emerging through terror. The connection between them pulsed like a heartbeat. Linda reached again, fingers clawing through darkness toward the figure of her sister. "Take my hand." In that instant she connected. A burst of warmth spread from their clasped hands, radiating outward, pushing against the cold tendrils wrapping around them. The shadows thrashed violently, hissing, trying to reclaim their grip. "No!" the figure shrieked, voice echoing with agony. The darkness began to unravel, tearing apart at the seams. Linda closed her eyes tightly, drawing strength from Sarah, from the hope spinning in her chest. She pulled, willing all her energy into their hands, the light piercing through the shadows. But just as they thought they might break free, the shadow's voice roared with fury. "You think you can escape me?" The world twisted violently, colors bleeding into one another until their surroundings morphed into a dizzying whirl of the scene they had just fled. Desperate screams rose, turning the air thick with fear. Linda opened her eyes to find that they were still in the circle, just a few feet away from where they had been. The children's faces froze, their expressions caught between anticipation and despair, as if waiting for a signal. Was it a trick? Or was there another way? "Look," Sarah pointed, eyes wide. "What is that?" From within the thrumming dark, a rift opened, pulsating with shimmering light. A doorway? An escape? But danger loomed closer, the shadow creeping menacingly toward them, its shape gathering strength. "Whatever you do, don't let go," Linda shouted, adrenaline spiking in her heartbeat. And as the rift widened, she could feel something pulling her in, something exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. Would they step into the light? Would that be salvation, or something even darker? The choice loomed in front of them, and with the shadow's presence growing heavier, the moment hung suspended in time. Would they take the leap, or was it too late? The rift pulsed wildly, a soft glow beckoning to them amidst the chaos. Linda could feel the weight of the shadow behind her, the air alive with a palpable menace. It was like a beast, crouched, waiting to pounce at even the slightest sign of weakness. "Just a few more steps," Linda urged, her voice cutting through the noise. She squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, feeling the delicate warmth against the creeping coldness that threatened to swallow them whole. It was an anchor to reality, a tether to hope. But the shadow roared again, the sound booming like thunder, sending shockwaves that rattled their bones. "You think you can escape? You are mine." The voice twisted, wrapping around them like barbed wire, tightening as they hesitated. "Keep moving." Sarah's eyes glimmered with determination. "Trust the light." With a deep breath, they stepped forward, plunging into the rift. It felt like being thrust into icy water, the cold clawing at their skin, threatening to drag them down into a bottomless abyss. For a heart-stopping moment, Linda couldn't tell if they were ascending or descending. Then light flooded in. It wrapped around them, warm and bright, a stark contrast to the darkness grinding against their backs. The tugging faded, and they felt themselves pulled through. Voices of despair softened into a whisper until, at last, there was only silence. But the silence was not comforting. It bore the weight of absence, a void that screamed questions. Linda opened her eyes slowly, seeking Sarah beside her, but the ground beneath them was unfamiliar. They stood on a desolate plain, a barren wasteland littered with remnants of lost souls. Torn dolls, rusted tricycles, scraps of children's drawings half buried in dust. Where are we? Sarah's voice trembled, searching the horizon filled with gray fog. The familiarity of their world felt like a distant memory, swallowed by the eerie embrace of this new reality. Somewhere we shouldn't be, Linda breathed, pumping a sense of urgency into her limbs. We have to find a way back. As they surveyed the land, shadows began to dance at the edge of their vision. It was a slow swaying, taunting and sinister, a familiar pull that made the hair on Linda's arms stand on end. Is this part of it? Linda whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. The shadows flickered closer, shapes solidifying. Twisted, malformed figures of the children they had seen before. Their faces were empty, eyes hollow, mouths stretching into unnatural grins. Forever, they echoed, their voices a haunting melody that wound around Linda's mind, tugging at her sanity. No, she shouted, looking back at Sarah. We need to stay strong. But there was no escape now. The rift that had once promised salvation seemed to beckon them deeper into this darkness. Linda felt the pull of memories, laughter, playtime, the simple joys of day-to-day life that now felt like cruel mockery against the backdrop of despair surrounding them. An unsettling breeze swept across the plain, carrying with it the chilling whispers from the shadows. Join us. Forever. No! Sarah screamed. But as the words left her lips, the figures melded into an ominous tide, swallowing the ground beneath their feet. Run! Linda charged forward, dragging Sarah along, heart pounding against her chest like a trapped bird. They sprinted through the wasteland, the ground fracturing beneath their feet with every step, threatening to open up like a gaping mouth ready to devour them whole. Each shadow stretched out like arms reaching for them, trying to close in around their throats. Just when they thought an end was in sight, a chasm opened up before them, deep and endless, darkness swirling into its depths like a storm. Linda. Sarah's voice quivered, filled with confusion and fear. What do we do? With no other choice, Linda yelled over her shoulder. Jump! And as they leapt into the chasm, the realization hit Linda. It was not merely darkness that awaited them. It was a plunge into the unknown. As gravity took hold, the shadow figures lingered at the edge, their hollow laughter echoing ominously against the walls of the void. What lay at the bottom? Would it lead them back to safety or deeper into the nightmare? They were falling, and with every second that passed, the ground rushed toward them, darkness reaching out, hungry and ravenous. Had they escaped the shadows only to face something worse? The answers lurked below, waiting for them to find out. They landed hard, an abrupt jolt that slammed their bodies into the cold, gritty ground. Linda's breath whooshed out of her, leaving her gasping in shock. For a moment all was silent, the darkness enveloping them like a thick shroud. Are you okay? Sarah's voice was a faint whisper, vibrating with fear. Linda could barely make out her friend's silhouette in the dim light that suffused the space around them, but the shadows seemed to pulse and shift, keeping them just out of clear view. I think so. Linda knelt, pushing herself up, bracing against the chilling ground which felt like glass shards beneath her palms. What is this place? They were in a cavern, the walls looming above them, damp and shimmering with an eerie glow. Ancient symbols etched into the rock pulsed softly, like a heartbeat in the dark, illuminating grotesque faces twisted in agony. The shadows skittered away from the light, retreating to the corners as if afraid. As they gained their footing, a low growl rumbled through the chamber, vibrating in Linda's bones, sending waves of icy panic coursing through her. Did you hear that? Sarah nodded, wide-eyed. What was that? We need to find a way out. Before they could move, the growl deepened into a roar, shaking the ground. A creature, grotesque and writhing, emerged from the shadows, a mass of limbs and distorted features, a nightmare forged from the very essence of fear. It lunged at them with snarling jaws, a foul breath washing over them. Run! Linda screamed, grabbing Sarah's wrist. They darted down the narrow passageways of the cavern, the sound of claws scraping against the stone close behind. Every step echoed, a reminder of how close the monster was. They dodged stalagmites jutting from the ground like crooked teeth. But there was no escape. The darkness was alive, clawing at their legs, growing thicker, making it hard to breathe. "Where do we go?" Sarah shouted, her voice nearly drowned by the pounding of their hearts. "We can't keep running forever." "We have to find a door or something," Linda urged, desperation clawing at her throat. "Some way out." Just as they rounded a corner, a flickering light caught Linda's eye. "There," she pointed. It was a door, half consumed in shadows, but the light spilled out from the thin cracks around its edges, beckoning them, promising safety. "No!" The creature's roar boomed, vibrating through the walls, and Linda could feel it growing closer. The door seemed to shake as if reacting to the creature's fury. "Push!" Linda wrestled against the door handle, muscles straining. It wouldn't budge. "Open, damn it!" Sarah joined her, panic urging her strength. The roar of the creature grew louder, a sound that promised death. And then, as if the universe was finally listening, with a loud crash, the door flew open, revealing a blinding light. They stumbled through, barely crossing the threshold when the creature slammed into the door, rattling the frame, the horrid sounds of fury echoing in their ears, driving them forward. They were not free yet. What lay beyond was a hall of mirrors, twisted reflections of themselves stretched and warped. Linda's heart raced, but the reflections didn't seem right. Some grinned maliciously, others opened their mouths in silent screams. "Don't look at them!" Sarah shouted, pulling Linda's attention back. The hall stretched far into the distance, slips of shadow manifesting in the mirrors, distorting their reality. With every step, the mirrors rippled, and whispers filled the air, speaking their deepest fears. "You cannot escape yourself." "Oh, God!" Linda gasped, squeezing her eyes shut as she felt the weight of her past crushing her. "We have to keep moving." But as they sprinted deeper into the hall, they were drenched in darkness, and the whispers grew louder, drowning out everything else. It was a cacophony of torment, memories flooding back, faces of loved ones twisted in despair, and nothing made sense anymore. Was this setting them free or trapping them forever? Quickening her pace, Linda couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not by the creature, but by something else lurking in the reflections. Something that knew them, that whispered the secrets they had buried so deep. "Linda, look out!" Sarah screamed, and Linda turned just in time to see her friend disappear into a mirror, pulled in like a moth into a flame. "Sarah!" Panic surged within Linda, but the hall began to warp around her, mirrors vibrating, trapping her in a world of distorted reflections. As the shadows stretched and twisted again, Linda's heart pounded in rhythm with the echoing message, "It's your turn now." What new horror awaited her in the depths of the hall? Would she find Sarah, or would she join her friend in a nightmare of endless mirrors and whispers? Linda stood frozen as the mirror rippled, the remnants of Sarah's scream fading into oblivion. The hall twisted around her, shadows lurking in every reflection. Her pulse hammered in her ears, drowning out the haunting whispers that swirled like a sinister wind. This was no ordinary challenge. It was a cruel echo of her deepest fears, each facet of her reflection morphing into grotesque parodies of her life. "Why did you leave?" A voice slithered from the shadows. "You think you can escape?" It was her own voice, but twisted, echoing back at her in merciless tones. "No," she shouted, shaking her head, willing herself to focus. She needed to find Sarah. Desperation fueled her, burning brighter than the fear that threatened to consume her entirely. In the warped mirrors, visions flickered, memories of playing in the backyard, birthdays, laughter. But each fragment morphed into shadows, faces contorting into heartbreaking images of loss and fear. "You're alone, Linda," the whispers lulled. "What can you do?" "Stop!" she screamed, forcing herself to remember the warmth of Sarah's hand, the strength in their bond. "She's counting on me." With renewed determination, Linda pressed forward, each step heavy but resolute. "I will find you, Sarah," she declared, shaking off the fleeting doubts that tangled her mind like threads of a spider web. Rounding another corner, she came face to face with a mirror reflecting an empty space. Heart racing, Linda called out, "Sarah!" In that moment, the surface shifted, warping into a doorway, flickering like an uncertain flame. Summoning all her courage, Linda took a leap of faith and stepped through. Suddenly she found herself in a small, dimly lit room. The air was thick, oppressive, as if the walls were closing in. But there on the floor lay a familiar scarf. It was Sarah's. "Sarah!" Linda fought against the anxiety tightening her chest. She knelt, fingers trembling as she grasped the fabric, a spark igniting within her. "I'm coming!" Gathering herself, she scanned the room, searching for any sign of her sister. A sudden thought crossed her mind. Could the shadows still be watching? She felt their eyes, cold and judgmental, boring into her. "What do you want from me?" she pressed, ready to fight back. "I choose to stand up for the ones I love." The whispering voices erupted into laughter, cruel and mocking. "You can't win, Linda. You were never meant to save her." "No," she shouted defiantly. "I refuse to believe that. I refuse to give in to you." With those words, something shifted in the air. A crack formed in the wall, light pouring through as if the darkness recoiled from her resolution. She saw shapes moving in the distance, ghostly figures reflecting the children she'd lost. They weren't just shadows, they were trapped spirits desperate for freedom. In that instant of clarity, Linda realized that to find Sarah, she needed to confront the truth, the burden of helplessness that the void had fed upon. The whispers, the shadows, they thrived on doubt and despair. "I will release you," she initiated loudly, her voice breaking through the chains of terror. "I will fight for you, and for Sarah." The wall shuddered at her words, the shadows recoiling in fear. Summoning all her energy, she dashed towards the crack. As she reached out, light exploded through the fissure, sweeping her outside into a vast landscape. The horizon stretched endlessly, painted with bright colors, a stark contrast to the darkness she had just fled. "Find me," a soft voice echoed, a whisper in the wind. "I'm closer than you think." "No," she gasped, the realization hitting her like a thunderbolt. It was Sarah guiding her. "I'll never give up on you." Linda sprinted across the vibrant land, freedom fueling each step as she raced towards the source of the voice. Shadows chased her, but she didn't look back, no longer afraid, determined and brave. "Linda," came the call again, stronger now, echoing with hope and light. She followed the sound, her heart igniting with the warmth of determination. Ahead, in a clearing, there stood Sarah, reaching out, her face illuminated by the glow of the sun rising against an endless sky. "I knew you'd find me." Tears streamed down Linda's cheeks as she closed the distance, exploding with joy and relief. "I promise you I won't leave you again." As they embraced, the shadows screeched, dissipating like smoke in the dawn light. The air transformed, radiating warmth and safety, surrounding them like a protective cloak. "Together we're stronger," Sarah said softly, looking into Linda's eyes. "Yes," Linda breathed, feeling the bond between them anchor her. "Together we can overcome anything." And in that moment they turned their backs on the darkness, standing firm and united against the fears that had once haunted them. As the sun rose higher, spilling golden beams across the land, they knew with hope, love, and courage, they had overcome the horror. The nightmares that had plagued them evaporated into the light, and as they stepped forward they realized nothing could truly hold them back. Together, they could face anything Maplewood threw their way. And as Linda and Sarah ventured into a bright new dawn, they left the haunting past behind, ready to embrace whatever life might bring next. Now I've got something important for you. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel to ensure you don't miss any of our upcoming exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and support the journey we're on together. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Let's keep this conversation alive. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this conclusion and be a part of our community. This is the moment where true fans show their unwavering support.